Hey guys, I'm Becky from Book Bite Reviews, and today I'm going to tell you how I did on my 20 and 20 challenge. For those of you who did not know, I set a challenge for myself of 20 books that I wanted to read in 2020. And today we're going to talk about how I did. Did I read them? Some. Did I enjoy them? Most. So the first book that I have on my 20 and 20 was Kingsbane by Claire Legrand. This book I ended up starting in December of 2020, but I decided to go ahead and put a pause on it. From what I read, I was enjoying it, but I just wasn't invested. I didn't feel like reading the book, and I didn't want to force myself to finish it just because I had this 20 and 20 challenge. So it's technically on the DNF list, but I do have plans to read it at some point. The next book is Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris. This is the first book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, the series that then inspired the show True Blood, which I have heard is getting a reboot. I don't know if they're going to redo it from the start or if it's going to be a continuation. Either way, I'm excited. I read this book for the very first time and I loved it. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars and I can't wait to continue on. The next book was The Collector by Victoria Scott. Now don't come for me. This book has a very large fan base who is very dedicated, but this book is on my DNF list and not a book that I enjoyed. So I don't remember where exactly I DNF'd this book. It was pretty early on, but Dante is a dick. Like, I'm sorry, but he is such an ass. He has no redeeming qualities. I did not like him at all, and I honestly could not get over the way that he thought about people, especially women, and I just couldn't come to terms with the fact that he's supposed to eventually fall in love with a girl that he constantly called hideous, always describing her as being ugly. It just didn't make any sense. He not once had anything nice to say about her, and I just couldn't do it. So I DNF'd this book. I have zero plans on ever revisiting it. I'm sorry, but the next book is My Lady Jane. This book has 3 authors. It's Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. Now, I decided to pick this book up kind of on a whim. I wanted an audiobook. I saw that my library had it. I decided to start it. I had no intention of finishing it, but it was amazing. This book gets 5 out of 5 stars. I finished it in like a 24-hour period, and this is not a small book, but I absolutely devoured it. I will say that the audiobook is excellent. It has multiple narrators that really make the book feel full and whole, and they really performed it instead of just reading the words on the page. So if you're going to check out this book, I would suggest the audiobook. It was excellent, and I'm so happy I read it. I can't wait to read the other books that are in this series. I believe that they're all technically standalones, so that's pretty cool. And I think the next one has to deal with ghosts, so I'm here for it. Next is The Vincent Boys by Abby Glines. This was another DNF, you guys. This book has a trope that I hate, and it wasn't done in a way where I could come up with some kind of rationalization of why it's okay. So the trope that it has in it is a cheating trope, which I kind of figured, but I didn't think it would be done in the way that it is. So this book is about a girl and 2 boys. The boys are cousins. The 3 of them, since they were little, have always been best friends, spent all day every day together, and now that they are older, teenagers, things are much different. So she has been in love with one of them ever since she was younger, but he has never reciprocated, and he's now like the town's black sheep. So she ends up dating his cousin, who's like the golden boy, does nothing wrong, and has always loved her. But now, for whatever reason, she wants to pursue her feelings for the darker one, probably more because her boyfriend is out of town and she like sees him on the side of the road stranded and helps him and the girl that he was on a date with, and feelings reignited, whatever. But I was kind of, I went in expecting there's going to be like cheatiness. I kind of figured it was going to be like she's having problems with her current boyfriend. You know, they find out that they have these feelings for each other, but they fight them. Something like that. No, her boyfriend is great. He loves and adores her, has never done anything wrong, and they don't fight their feelings for each other at all. Like, they're she's cheating on her boyfriend, I think, within like the first or second chapter. So I did not get far in this book whatsoever, and yeah, it's a giant DNF. Okay, my husband just called me in the middle of this, so I think we're at the same angle, but if it looks slightly different, blame him. So the next book is The Cerulean by Amy Ewing. This is another DNF. I originally said when I DNF'd this book in my reading vlog that it was more of a soft DNF. I may go back and read it. I think at this point I've decided I don't have any intention of going back to this book. There really wasn't anything wrong with this book, but it's not what I expected when I went into it. So I expected this book to be very dark and obsessive like her Jewel series. This was not it. This was very, very different. I did enjoy that it had some diverse characters as far as characters who are in the LGBTQ community, but I was just really disappointed that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and just didn't have any interest or care about these characters. And it's so sad because I was obsessed and devoured the Jewel series, so I'm really sad. Next is A Curso Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. I finally read this book. I just read it in December and I loved it. It is 5 out of 5 stars. I will say one thing that I didn't know going into it that I have never heard anyone talk about is that this book isn't like a normal kind of fluffier side of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our character ends up getting kidnapped into this realm to try to be the one that will fall in love with the Beast. So she's taken against her will. She is very stubborn and outspoken and is not going to be told what to do. It's not like, she meets the Beast and, they have some tension and then, like they're friends to lovers or something like that. Something like I was expecting. No, this is like hardcore enemies to, I'm not going to say what because you just need to read it. This was a very surprising book. It is very on point with a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but at the same time very, very different. And I'm sure you guys already know it does have a cerebral palsy rep, which was fantastic. I loved it. Such a cool thing to do, and yeah. Check this out if you haven't yet. I'll definitely be continuing on with the series. Next was A Match Made in Mehendi by Nandini Bajpai. This book I read in February of 2020, so I remember bits and pieces. What I do know is that it got 5 stars. I remember really, really enjoying this. I believe that this book is about a girl who creates this app that will match you up with people in your high school that you should date, like who you're most compatible with. Her and her brother make it, and it's like a secret anonymous app. They get into trouble for it. And the way that they were inspired to do it / executed it is that she is from a long line of traditional matchmakers. And so she uses her mother and aunt's matchmaker handbook to create this app. So she's rebelling against becoming a matchmaker, but at the same time she's really good at it and creates this like virtual way to do it. So it was a really good book, and I do suggest you pick it up. I think it was perfect to read for Valentine's Day, which is what I did. Next is The Lovely Reckless by Garcia. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and the more I think about it, the more that I just kind of like laugh with this book. So I love Garcia. I think she's an excellent author. I usually love everything she writes, but for some reason this book just didn't hit it for me. And I wasn't in love with it, so I gave it 4 out of 5. And after talking with a coworker who also read it, he described it as being a Veronica Mars fan fiction where Veronica falls in love with Weevil. Now that I know that, I can't unsee it, and that's exactly what the book is. Like, I almost wish that that's what it truly was. It might be. I don't know. I haven't asked Cami, but I doubt it. But if that would have been the way that it was described of me going in, I probably would have enjoyed it more. I will say though, just where the book stands, it's a 4-star book. It's good. It's not amazing. It is what it is. Next was The Glittering Court by Rochelle Mead. This book I ended up not picking up at all. I just ended up not having time by the end of the year, which is something I'll talk about at the end of this video. So I wanted to read this book. I attempted to pick it up earlier in the year via audiobook, but I do not like the audio narrator at all. So I wanted to physically pick it up, but I ended up running out of time. Next is What If It's Us by Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. This book was excellent. I loved that this book had a realistic ending. It felt so true and real, and I loved that our characters are going through a lot. They have a lot of struggles, and the ending kind of matched that. It didn't magically make anything better. And I have heard that in 2021 we are getting a sequel to this of them many years later, and I'm so excited to read it. I can't wait to see what's going to happen, and I'm just here for it. Next was Sadie by Courtney Summers. I was so excited to read this book. On my list, I did give it 5 out of 5 stars, but the more I think about it, I feel like it's more of a 4-star book. I don't know. See, the problem is this book was really good, and the audiobook was fantastic. I really love the structure of this book, that we have these podcasts, we have interviews, we have other people's point of views. It was really cool, and the audiobook was done with a full cast, so it was excellently executed. However, I was expecting something much darker, and this book really wasn't that. So I gave it 5 out of 5 just because everything about it is excellent, and it feels like it deserves 5 out of 5, but my level of disappointment, because it's not exactly as dark as I expected going into it, makes it feel like a 4. So I'm going to leave it at a 5, but don't go in thinking this is going to be like crazy dark. Next is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Crescent City series. All I'm going to say about this book is that it was a 5 out of 5. It was amazing. I can't wait for the next one. Next week, my top 10 books of 2020 should be coming out, so watch that for my full thoughts on this book. Next is I Know You Remember by Jennifer Donaldson. This book got 5 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely excellent. I really, really loved this book. I thought that it was everything I was hoping for and more. I did read another Jennifer Donaldson book called The Lies You Never Told Me, I think is what it's called. I read that in 2019, or maybe it was 2018. But it was one of my top books of the year whenever I read it. When I found out that she was coming out with another book, I definitely had to read it because I just love that one. And while the books are very, very different, I will say that the dark, atmospheric feel of them and the kind of like trickery of you really don't know who to believe or what to believe and characters surprising you, that all stays the same within these 2 books. So if you enjoyed that one, check this one out. Vice versa. It was a good book. Next was The QB Bad Boy and Me by Tay Marley. This was a book that got 5 out of 5 stars. I will say that this one is a different 5-star for me. So some 5 stars for me are ones that are excellently executed and completely flawless, blow my mind. And then there's other 5 stars that are guilty pleasures and were just so amazing, but yet so bad at the same time, but I loved it. So this book kind of falls into that one. It is very cheesy, very like dramatic YA angsty romance, but I loved it. I couldn't not love this book. I was laughing out loud for scenes. To be fair, there are scenes where you're supposed to be laughing out loud, so it's not like I was laughing at the book, I was laughing with the book, but yeah, this isn't like the same 5-star caliber as House of Earth and Blood, but it's still a 5-star. Next is Truly Madly Royally by Debbie Ragod. This book gets 5 out of 5 stars. It's another book that I decided to pick up in February to read in celebration of Valentine's Day. This book follows a girl who accidentally, unknowingly falls in love with a prince. And I just thought this book was so well executed. It was super cute, super short. And while it was super short, it honestly was so well done that it didn't feel like you lost any quality of it not having 350 plus pages. It was excellent. It was exactly what I needed to read for Valentine's Day, and I loved it. Next is Wild Crush by Simone Eccles. This is the second book to Wild Cards, and I believe that the series is only going to be a duology. Wild Cards I absolutely loved. I gave that book 5 out of 5 stars when I originally read it. I did reread it in preparation to read this one, and it still got 5 out of 5 stars. However, this one gets 4 out of 5 stars, and maybe more like 3.5, 3.75, but we'll round up to 4. This book just was not the same as Wild Cards. While the people who get together, I fully believe that they're like meant to be together and they had a good relationship. But the problem I had is that one of them is featured in the first book being in a relationship with somebody else, and they are basically relationship goals in this book. Like, everyone talks about how they are amazing and perfect for each other. So the fact that in this book it turns out that they're not perfect was kind of weird, and the reason that they're not perfect is mostly because one of them is in love with someone else. It was like slight cheating trope, but I don't think anybody actually cheated, and it was just a weird feeling. Next is Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This is another book that I ended up starting in December and putting on pause. I don't know what's wrong with me. For this one, I only read the first chapter. I started it and just wasn't feeling it at all. Like, there was nothing about it that I wanted to read. It just felt like this is a big thing that I gotta jump into and I'm not ready for it. And so I put it on pause. I know. I don't understand what's wrong with me because I loved Serpent and Dove. So I don't know why I'm feeling this way towards this one. So it will eventually be read. I'm excited to read it, but for some reason I have no urge to read it. Like, I want to have already read it, but I don't want to pick it up. Next was Wicked Fox by Cat Cho. This book got 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved the atmosphere that this book creates. I love that it takes place in Seoul and that we had all these different cultural references going on. It was excellent. I think that the story was really well done. I am pretty sad that the second book isn't following the same characters that it did in this one, but at the same time, I'm kind of excited for it, and I'm definitely going to read it. And last but certainly not least is Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. This book took me so long to finally pick up. So I pre-ordered this book in a Owlcrate box, I believe. Got it on release day and didn't pick it up until like September or October. I'm so embarrassed for how long it took me to finally pick up this book, because once I did, it was absolutely amazing. Like, no surprise there whatsoever. Wicked Saints was my #1 book of last year, so the fact that I love this book comes as no freaking surprise. It was amazing. The third book comes out in 2021, and it's the third and final book in this series, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Will I read it once I get it? Probably not. Let's be real. So guys, those are all 20 books that I attempted to read in 2020. I think overall I did pretty well. I will say what I really enjoyed getting out of this is that I don't want to do this again. I am not setting up a 21 in 21 list. If you check out my 2021 reading journal setup, I do kind of talk about this, and I did create a 2021 TBR. So it has way more than 21 books on it, but it's just a giant list of books that I would really like to get to. So if there's ever a time where I'm really not sure what to pick up, I can look at this list and pick up one of those books. I'm not setting any kind of like minimum, maximum kind of thing. It's just not conducive, and it's not really working out for me. So what ends up happening when I create these lists is at the beginning of the year, anything's possible. The world is my oyster. It seems totally doable. I come up with like a plan of like, I'll read X number of these each month. And then as the months go on, there's a couple of books that I'm not in the mood to read, and I try to force myself, and it either works out or it doesn't. And it's just a whole lot of pressure. So I'm going into 2021 with the mindset of I don't want to read anything because I have to. I want to read things that I want to read. I want to enjoy my reading experience. I don't want to set up all of these barriers and restrictions that will make my reading stressful. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Go ahead and leave a comment telling me if there were any books that you felt pressured to read this year, and did you end up reading them? Don't forget, if you enjoyed this, to please give it a thumbs up. Keep reading, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!